He said I'd be back mowing lawns by summer, that no computer would ever feed me. And when I drove into the family barbecue in a red Ferrari, my dad still didn't believe it was mine. What does it take to be seen? Not by the world, but by the people who've already decided who you are. This is the story of a young man who built a financial empire out of late nights and rejection letters, and the father who measured success in calloused hands and sunburned necks. It's not a tale about revenge. It's about recognition. And what happens when two generations learn to respect each other without ever saying the words? You're about to hear a story that might feel personal, because maybe in some way it already is. My name is Joshua Langford. I'm 23 years old, and I built a financial technology startup from a tiny apartment in Charleston, South Carolina. But that's not where this story begins. It begins in my father's backyard. Well, actually, his business, Langford Landscaping. He started it with one truck, one mower, and a whole lot of sweat. And for as long as I can remember, he believed success had to hurt to be real. You had to feel it in your bones. You had to come home dirty. So when I chose finance over following him into the family business, he didn't say much. He just shook his head and muttered something like, "Boys who play with computers don't last long in the real world." I wish I could say I proved him wrong overnight. But truth is, it took years. Years of rejection, of ramen dinners, of watching my friends live normal lives while I coded in the dark, chasing a dream no one believed in, not even my own family, except maybe my mom. She never said out loud, but she believed in a quiet way. She believed the way mothers do, with folded bills slipped into your coat pocket and late-night prayers when she thought I was asleep. And as for my dad, well, let's just say this story doesn't end the way either of us expected. In the next part, I'll take you back to the summer I almost gave up and the email that changed everything. For weeks, I told myself it was nothing. Just stress, just long hours, just another cup of bad coffee on another empty highway. My name is Cameron Doyle. I've been a long-haul trucker for over 2 decades. It's not a glamorous job, but it paid the bills, kept food on the table, and gave my wife Dana the life I thought she wanted. That's the thing about people like me. We don't complain. We push through. So when the tightness in my chest started showing up more often, I didn't go to a doctor. I went to the next stop. When the shortness of breath came, I rolled down the window and told myself the air was just too dry. When my left arm started going numb outside of Omaha, I finally pulled over and called 911. They airlifted me to Sioux Falls. By the time the helicopter touched down, I could barely speak. I remember the flashing lights. I remember a nurse shouting, "We're losing him." And then nothing. They told me later I flatlined. Twice. It was a heart attack. Not panic. Not stress. My heart had been trying to tell me something my mind refused to hear. You can't keep living like this. You see, in this country, especially among working-class men, there's this quiet pressure to tough it out, to ignore the signs, to avoid the doctor, to believe that being strong means being silent. But that silence almost cost me my life. And I wasn't the only one who'd been pretending, because when I finally woke up in that hospital bed, tubes in my arms, stemmed my heart and a dull ache in my chest, I reached for my phone, and what I saw would hurt far more than anything the heart monitor could pick up. But we'll get to that. First, let me take you back to the woman I thought I knew, the life we built, and all the quiet signs I chose not to see. There's a kind of pain that doesn't show up on any scan. When Cameron opened his eyes in the ICU, it wasn't the stitches or the slow ache in his chest that hit the hardest. It was the absence, the empty chair where Dana used to sit, the silence where her morning voice used to be. The nurse told him gently that his wife hadn't visited in days. At first, he thought maybe she was overwhelmed. Maybe work got in the way. But when he asked for his phone and finally logged into their joint account, his heart didn't just sink. It shattered. The balance read $0. Dana had drained everything. Their savings, his emergency fund, even the small account they kept for groceries. All gone. And just like that, so was she. This wasn't just financial betrayal. It was emotional devastation. To be at your weakest, your most vulnerable, and realize the person you trusted most saw that as their moment to walk away, not to stand by your side. And Cameron isn't alone. There are stories, too many, of patients waking up after surgeries, only to discover their spouse, sibling, or even child had taken control of their finances. Some had signed documents they didn't understand. Others never even knew their accounts were being accessed. In times of illness, the body is healing, but the heart can be blindsided by the truth. We don't like thinking about worst-case scenarios, especially when we're young or seemingly healthy. But life is unpredictable, and love, sometimes, is not as unconditional as we hope. Setting up financial protections isn't cold. It's wise. Power of attorney documents, separate emergency funds, and trusted legal counsel can feel unnecessary until the day they aren't. It doesn't mean you expect betrayal. It means you protect your peace. As Cameron stared at the blinking monitor beside him, the nurse gently placed a cup of water by his bedside and whispered, "You've still got time to rebuild." And he did, not just his health, but his sense of self, his faith in the future, and the idea that maybe rock bottom can still be the start of something steady. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. Cameron stared at the message from Dana, the woman he thought he would grow old with. She hadn't visited him in the ICU, and now she was texting to say she'd taken the money, left, and hoped he'd understand. There was no apology, no regret, just a cold detachment wrapped in a few digital words. Cameron didn't cry. He didn't shout. He didn't even call her. He just sent a single emoji. That's it. Now that might seem strange. Some would expect a furious phone call, a long message full of pain and disbelief. But Cameron knew something. Sometimes when your heart is in pieces, the best move is to wait, to do nothing yet. That thumbs up wasn't weakness. It was a quiet declaration. I see you, and I'll respond on my terms, not yours. Think of the people who rush into action after betrayal. Quitting jobs in anger, confronting people in public, venting online. It might feel good for a moment, but later, many regret it, especially when legal matters follow. One man shared how, after surgery, he found out his brother had sold their shared property without his consent. He exploded, sending threatening emails and angry texts. In court, those were used to question his mental stability and delay the trial. Cameron? He gave Dana nothing she could weaponize. Just calm, just space, just silence. Silence doesn't mean defeat. It's a choice, a pause, a reset. When you've been hurt deeply, especially by someone close, reacting impulsively gives them more power. But stillness? Stillness is a shield. It allows you to breathe, observe, and decide your next move with clarity. As Cameron lay in that hospital bed, the machines beeping steadily beside him, he knew something had changed. He wasn't just recovering from surgery. He was preparing for something bigger, something stronger than rage, resolution, and slowly, quietly started to build. Not revenge, but a future they could never take from him. Sometimes, it's not the people you talk to every day who end up saving you. It's the ones who've always been there, even if quietly from the sidelines. Cameron had always handled things himself. He prided himself on it. He'd built a life, paid the bills, took care of everything and everyone. But when he woke up to a world that had changed, no wife, no money, no home, he found himself sitting in a hospital room with no plan and no strength. And then Jeff showed up. Jeff wasn't close. Not on the call every weekend kind of way. He was Cameron's older cousin, more like a faded memory from childhood holidays and backyard barbecues. But Jeff had always noticed things. And when he heard the news from another relative, he quietly took a day off work and drove 3 hours to see Cameron in person. He didn't bring flowers. He brought folders, medical paperwork, financial notes, questions that needed answering, and a simple sentence that carried more comfort than 100 apologies. Let's figure this out together. A few hours later, Megan called, his younger sister, the one who'd moved to Oregon and only came home once every few years. She wasn't emotional, but her voice cracked when she asked, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" By the end of the call, she had arranged temporary housing for him. sent money for essentials, and booked a ticket to visit the following weekend. She didn't need to say much. Her actions spoke louder. It's funny how life works. Sometimes, the people you expect to lean on walk away, and the ones you almost forgot about are the first to steady your shoulders. In American culture, family isn't just about shared blood. It's about showing up, especially when the world stops spinning. It's about history, yes, but more than that, it's about trust. Don't assume distance equals disconnection. The quiet cousin, the faraway sibling, the aunt who always sends a card, even when you forget her birthday. They might be the ones who surprise you when you fall. Not all heroes arrive with a spotlight. Some come with soup, a laptop, and a calm voice saying, "We've got this." Cameron had thought he was alone, but Jeff and Megan reminded him that sometimes the strongest line of defense is the one you didn't see coming because they've been behind you all along. Looking back, it all made sense, but at the time, it just felt like a long stretch of silence. A few missed calls, a busy calendar. Dana seemed tired, distracted, a little more distant. Cameron never imagined it was the beginning of the end. He thought they were comfortable. He thought this was just what happened when people have been married for over a decade. Life got busy, routines took over, and affection softened into habit. But love doesn't quietly disappear. It erodes. Dana stopped making coffee for two. She started going out without saying where. She smiled less, sighed more, and began scrolling through her phone more often than she looked at Cameron's face. He remembered once walking into the room, saying something funny, and watching her stare blankly past him. No laugh, not even a blink. That moment stuck with him, though he brushed it off at the time. And that's the thing. The signs are almost always there. But we don't want to see them, because seeing them means admitting something is wrong. And admitting something is wrong means we might have to face the possibility that the life we built might be falling apart. Many people make the same mistake Cameron did. They confuse being stable with being loved. They think that as long as the bills are paid, the fridge is full, and no one's yelling, then everything must be fine. But marriage is not a calendar full of shared appointments. It's not defined by the number of nights spent under the same roof. It's about emotional presence, about looking at your partner and still seeing them, and being seen. Cameron realized too late that he had become less of a partner and more of a provider. The man who used to make Dana laugh, the one who held her when she cried. He had slowly become just a background figure in her life. From hero to husband to household name on a joint bank account. Love doesn't disappear in a flash. It fades in the quiet moments we stop paying attention. And sometimes, the real heartbreak isn't the betrayal. It's the realization that it began long before the betrayal even happened. When you stopped showing up, when they stopped trying, when both of you forgot why you started this in the first place. Cameron sat with that grief, not just the loss of Dana, but the loss of who they used to be. And as he exhaled, he told himself, next time, if there's a next time, I'll listen better. I'll pay attention to quiet. Before we continue, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever ignored the red flags simply because you love someone too much to see the truth? Or maybe you've gone through something similar, when the little signs were there all along, but it took one moment to finally wake up. Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. Your story might be the one that gives someone else the courage to face their own. Now, let's get back to it. Cameron never thought he'd need a lawyer. He was the kind of man who paid his taxes early, read every contract before signing, and trusted the people he loved. But now, he was playing a game he couldn't afford to lose. Not for revenge, but to protect what little he had left. When Jeff suggested they talk to Blake, Cameron hesitated. "I'm not the kind of guy who sues," he said. Blake smiled gently and replied, "You're not suing, you're standing up." Blake wasn't just any attorney. He specialized in family and elder law. And after hearing Cameron's story, he looked him straight in the eye and said, "What Dana did isn't just cruel. It might be illegal." You see, in many states across the U.S., there are laws specifically designed to protect people who are medically vulnerable, like the Exploitation of Vulnerable Adults Act. It's there for situations just like this. Someone in ICU, sedated, unable to manage their affairs, and someone else draining their accounts, making decisions, disappearing. That's not just betrayal. That's exploitation. With Blake on legal strategy and Megan managing records like a woman on a mission, they built what Cameron jokingly began to call his rescue team. They didn't come at Dana with threats. They came with facts, bank statements, medical records, phone logs, a timeline that showed everything. From the moment Cameron entered the hospital to the moment Dana made her final withdrawal and vanished. And that's what legal chess is. Not making the loudest move, but making the smartest one 3 steps ahead. Knowing where the board is going before the other side even realizes they're cornered. Power doesn't come from shouting in anger. It comes from knowing your rights and using them. Cameron didn't fight back with fists or fury. He fought with clarity, with people who had his back, with laws written for people just like him, who never imagined they'd be hurt by someone they loved. As the paperwork moved forward and the legal gears began to turn, Cameron felt something lift. Not just hope, but purpose. He wasn't just recovering anymore. He was reclaiming. Trust, when broken, is hard enough, but when it's broken by someone who lives just a few feet from your front door, it hits differently. Harold had always been that neighbor. He waved from his porch each morning, brought over fresh tomatoes from his backyard garden, checked on Cameron when Dana said he was in the hospital. Harold had a kind voice, a quick laugh, and apparently a lot more access than anyone realized. After Dana left and the dust began to settle, Cameron found himself replaying everything. The text messages, the phone calls, the moments when Dana had been out late or needed space. And there, in the background of nearly every memory, was Harold. At first, it had seemed like neighborly support. Harold had even offered to help Dana with house stuff while Cameron was in the ICU. She'd mentioned his name so often, it almost became routine. Harold helped with the trash cans again. Oh, Harold said we could borrow his ladder. Harold picked up the mail. But slowly it felt less like a coincidence and more like a cover. Harold hadn't just been helpful. He'd been present at the wrong times in the wrong places. There were photos, transaction receipts, a few quiet comments from other neighbors that suggested more than just shared yard tools. Harold had known Dana was planning something, and instead of stepping back or stepping up, he chose to stay close to both of them. That's what makes betrayal from a neighbor so hard. It's not just about proximity. It's about access, about watching someone smile at you while knowing they're standing too close to your pain. In American neighborhoods, we grow up thinking community means protection. But sometimes the most dangerous people aren't strangers. They're the ones who know your garage code. Trusting others isn't foolish, but it should have boundaries, because kindness without clarity can be manipulated. And being a good neighbor doesn't always mean being a good person. Cameron learned this the hard way. He stopped waving to Harold. He changed his locks. And he reminded himself that it wasn't paranoia. It was protection. Because sometimes the person peeking through the curtain isn't watching out for you. They're just watching. Some moments don't need fireworks to shake the room. Just a quiet click and a screen lighting up. Cameron sat stiffly in the courtroom chair, hands folded, heart steady. It had taken months to get here. Months of paperwork, silence, and second-guessing. Across the room sat Dana, poised, composed, dressed for sympathy. She wore soft beige and a subtle frown, like a woman wrongfully accused. But she didn't know what was coming. Blake stood up and said just 7 words to the judge. "Your Honor, we'd like to submit video evidence." A flat screen was rolled in. The lights dimmed slightly. And then the moment the footage played, taken from a neighbor's doorbell camera, a lucky coincidence. There was Dana. There was Harold, laughing, kissing, carrying boxes out of Cameron's home while he lay unconscious in a hospital bed. Cameron didn't look at the screen. He watched her, watched how Dana's smile froze, how her hands curled slightly in her lap, how her attorney whispered urgently while she stared, stone-faced, but blinking faster than before. The courtroom was quiet, not because people were shocked, but because they were processing. And then came the documents. Megan had dug through Dana's shared email folders and found transaction logs. Blake had confirmation from HR at Dana's workplace. She had taken time off claiming Cameron was in a coma and used that time to move funds. It wasn't just about hurt feelings anymore. It was about proof. Proof of financial exploitation. Proof of fraud. Proof of intent. That's what shifted everything. Not the emotion, not the betrayal, but the evidence. In the eyes of the law, feelings are important, but facts are everything. And that day, Cameron didn't just tell his story. He showed it. Actions have consequences. And when truth shows up with receipts, justice starts walking too. For so long, Dana had counted on charm, confusion, and distance. But the law doesn't care how sweet you sound. It cares about what you did. The judge called for recess. Dana avoided Cameron's gaze. And for the first time, Cameron walked out of the room upright. Not because he'd won yet, but because he'd been heard. There's a certain kind of quiet that follows chaos. Not the silence of shock, but the hush that comes when the storm has passed and you're still standing. For Cameron, that quiet came slowly. It didn't arrive the moment the court ruled in his favor. Not even when Dana moved out for good. It came in the small, quiet ways. The morning, he made coffee without thinking of who else needed a cup. The first night, he slept through without checking his phone. The house felt too big now. Too many rooms filled with old echoes. So he sold it, not in anger, but as an offering to himself, a release. He used part of the money to help Megan finally apply to law school. "You've been defending people your whole life," he told her. "It's time you had the title for it." Then, something unexpected happened. Cameron didn't go back to his old career. Instead, he took a job as a dispatcher for emergency services. Smaller office, less pressure, fewer hours, but a sense of meaning, of helping people through their worst days, just like someone once did for him. From storm to still water. That's what healing looked like. No dramatic reinventions. No lavish vacations or loud declarations of starting over. Just a slower life, a steadier one. Meals shared with family. Evenings spent walking his dog. Phone calls with Jeff, who now called him brother instead of cousin. And here's the truth. Not all scars stay open. Not all endings leave you broken. Some of them, if you let them, clear a path, not back to who you were, but forward toward someone new, someone softer, wiser, quieter maybe, but stronger in all the right places. You don't need fireworks to rebuild. Sometimes peace is enough. Not everything lost needs replacing. Some things leave so that something better, not louder but deeper, can take root. And one morning, as Cameron stood on the back porch of his new, smaller home, coffee in hand, sunlight in his eyes, he finally felt it. Not victory, not revenge, just peace. In the end, it wasn't the house or the money that mattered, not even the marriage certificate. It was a quiet understanding that some things fall apart so better things can begin. One afternoon, Cameron found himself in the attic of his new home, sorting through boxes he hadn't touched since the move. He wasn't looking for anything in particular, just clearing space, making room. That's when he saw it, the wedding album, cream-colored leather cover, a little dusty at the edges. He sat with it for a moment, didn't cry, didn't flinch. He opened the cover and flipped through the pages slowly. There they were, he and Dana, smiling, dancing, holding hands like they had a whole world ahead of them. And for a moment, he let himself remember, not out of grief, but out of gratitude. Because even though it ended badly, it wasn't all bad. There were years filled with real moments and real lessons, and that mattered. He didn't throw the album away. He didn't need to. He just closed it gently and placed it on the shelf. Not front and center, but not hidden either. Just acknowledged. And that's the truth most people don't talk about. Sometimes, moving on doesn't look like slamming a door. It looks like placing a memory back where it belongs, without bitterness. Cameron didn't hate Dana. He didn't wish her harm. He simply released her. And in doing so, he released himself. You don't get to control who hurts you, but you do get to control what you do next. And healing isn't about pretending it didn't happen. It's about deciding that it no longer defines you. Happiness isn't what someone gives you. It's what you build patiently after they're gone. So no, Cameron didn't get back what he lost. He gained something else instead. A life that was finally his, rooted in truth, surrounded by people who showed up when it mattered, and most importantly, a heart that, despite everything, chose to stay open. Thank you so much for staying with me until the end of this story. If there's one thing we can take away from Cameron's journey, it's this. Sometimes, being broken open is the beginning of being rebuilt stronger. Pain has a way of showing us who truly belongs in our life, and who never did. Now it's your turn. How did this story make you feel? Have you ever had to start over after a deep betrayal? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters here. And if this story touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. There are many more true, powerful stories coming your way. Until next time, take care of your heart and never forget your worth.